Here are the top 10 richest countries in the world 2023. This ranking is based on the country's GDP per capita using the Purchasing Power Parity (PPP). 10. San Marino. GDP per capita is 78,926. With a population of 34,000. Tiny San Marino is the oldest republic in Europe and the fifth smallest country on the map. It may have only 34,000 citizens, but it is among the wealthiest citizenry in the world. It helps that income tax rates are very low, at about 1/3 of the EU average. Nonetheless, San Marino is working towards harmonizing its fiscal laws and regulations with those of the European Union, EU, and international standards. The tiny nation showed remarkable resilience during the pandemic and after amid tight monetary conditions and the energy crisis, with its tourism industry and manufacturing sector turning especially strong performances. 9. United States of America. Their GDP per capita is $80,070, and with a populations of 334,233,854. The United States first entered the top 10 list in 2020, after hovering just beyond 10th place for the better part of the past 2 decades. America's entry and continuing presence in the top 10 are due to falling energy prices and pandemic-driven state spending. Meanwhile, the emergency surge in government spending on stimulus checks, increased food stamp benefits and expanded Medicaid enrollment boosted aggregate demand significantly. As a result, the U.S. had its shortest recession on record in early 2020, lasting only 2 months. Fortunately, the American job market has recovered since the start of the pandemic, although the highest inflation rate in 40 years has eaten into workers' wages. 8. Norway. GDP per capita is 77,808 with a populations of 5,548,887. Since the discovery of large offshore reserves in the late 1960s, Norway's economic engine has been fueled by oil. As Western Europe's top petroleum producer, the country has benefited for decades from rising prices. But when pandemic came, it affects Norway economy. After the initial shock of pandemic, the economy of Norway gradually pared the losses and closed the year at -1.2% GDP growth. Then in 2021 the economy rebounded, growing overall by almost 3.9% and around 3.3% in 2022. When it comes to any unforeseen economic problem, Norwegians can always count on their $1.3 trillion sovereign wealth fund, the world's largest. But unlike many other rich nations, Norway's high per capita GDP figures are a reasonably accurate reflection of the average person's economic well-being. The country has amongst the smallest income inequality gaps in the world. 7. Switzerland. Their GDP per capita is $87,963, with a populations of 8,845,195. Switzerland is famous for its mountains, clocks and its food, especially cheese and chocolates. Switzerland's economy is said to be highly competitive. Its most important sector is manufacturing, with numerous large corporations being headquartered in the country. Main exports include chemicals, as well as precision watches and instruments. This country owes much of its wealth to banking and insurance services, to tourism, and exports. All in all, Switzerland is a fairly wealthy country with a stable economy. This is reflected in its employment figures and national debt, as well as the above-mentioned fact that Switzerland remained largely unaffected by the economic crisis. 6. United Arab Emirates. The GDP per capita is $88,221, with a populations of 9,516,871. Agriculture, fishing and trading pearls. These used to be the economic mainstays of this Persian Gulf nation. Then oil was discovered in the 1950s and everything changed. Today, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, highly cosmopolitan population enjoys considerable wealth. Traditional Islamic architecture mixes with glitzy shopping centers and workers come from all over the world lured by tax-free salaries and year-round sunshine, only about 20% of the people living in the country are actually locally born. The UAE's economy is also becoming increasingly diversified. Outside of the traditionally dominant hydrocarbon sector, tourism, construction, trade and finance are major industries. This is not to say that the UAE was not impacted by the pandemic and the concomitant fall of oil prices, quite the contrary. Incredible as it may seem, the UAE briefly slipped out of the IMF's ranking of the richest countries globally for the first time in decades. Yet fossil fuels have not gone out of fashion. As soon as energy prices recovered, the UAE quickly regained its historic position among the top 10 richest countries in the world. 5. Macau. With 89,558 US dollar GDP per capita, and a population of 675,930. Macau is one of the famous cities in the world which is extremely visited by a lot of travelers every year. Ranging from world-class casinos to modern parks, they combine all the exclusive delicacies in their city. Macau's gaming sector dominates the economy. The government of Macau, GOM, taxes casinos for 39% of gaming revenue, which includes a direct tax of 35% and a 4% contribution for social and welfare purposes. Tourism is the backbone of Macau's economy, and much of it geared towards gambling, which was legalized in the 19th century and has since been the linchpin of the economy and an important source of revenue for the government. 4. Qatar. The GDP per capita is 124,834 US dollars with a population of 3,027,804. Qatar is a well-known tourist and commercial destination in the Middle East. Qatar occupies a small desert peninsula and extends into the midsection of the Persian Gulf. Primarily, Qatar is famous for the 2022 World Cup, Hamad International Airport, Oryx, and oil and gas. Petroleum and natural gas are the cornerstones of Qatar's economy and account for more than 70% of total government revenue, more than 60% of gross domestic product, and roughly 85% of export earnings. Qatar has the world's third largest proven natural gas reserve and is the second largest exporter of natural gas. Qatar gained independence in 1971, and massive oil and natural gas reserves have made it one of the world's richest countries. Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani has promoted improvements in infrastructure, health care, and education and the expansion of manufacturing, construction, and financial services. 3. Singapore. GDP per capita is 133,895 US dollars with a population of 6,177,793. Singapore is known for its outstanding quality of life, with a high standard of living and modern amenities. The healthcare system is well developed, making it easy for expats to access the medical care they need quickly and efficiently. An economic powerhouse. Amidst global economic headwinds, Singapore remains one of the world's strongest economies. Anchored in political stability, low corruption rates and transparent public institutions, we are a trusted partner for businesses. With a business-friendly regulatory environment and a very low unemployment rate, Singapore is one of the world's most prosperous nations. The Singapore economy is mainly driven by exports in electronics manufacturing and machinery, financial services, tourism, and the world's busiest cargo seaport. 2. Luxembourg. GDP per capita, 142,490 US dollars, with a population of 660,809. Luxembourg, a tiny country in Western Europe, is often regarded as the world's wealthiest nation. With a high GDP per capita and a high standard of living for its citizens, the country has become a model for economic success. Luxembourg is a developed country with an advanced economy and one of the world's highest GDP (PPP) per capita as per IMF and World Bank estimates. The city of Luxembourg was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1994 due to the exceptional preservation of its vast fortifications and historic quarters. Luxembourg now has a mixed manufacturing and services economy, and financial services account for 25% of GDP. With low energy costs, a reliable electricity grid, stable governance, and a growing data storage sector, Luxembourg is attracting interest as a hub for the 21st century information economy. 1. Ireland. GDP per capita is $145,196, with a population of 5,104,528. The economy of the Republic of Ireland is a highly developed knowledge economy, focused on services in high-tech, life sciences, financial services and agribusiness, including agri-food. Ireland is an open economy, and ranks first for high-value foreign direct investment flows. Ireland's real GDP is estimated to have increased by 12.0% in 2022, driven by a rebound in private consumption and the continued solid performance of net exports, related to the activity of multinational companies. Sentiment readings in the first quarter of 2023 reflected an upbeat pace of activity. The high level of GDP per capita in Ireland can be partly explained by the presence of large multinational companies holding intellectual property, according to Eurostat findings. The Constitution provides that the state shall favor private initiative in industry and commerce, but the state may provide essential services and promote development projects in the absence of private initiatives.